Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how to put together your first 1000 point army for Warhammer 40,000 using my Imperial Fists as an example. I've been looking forward to making this video for a while now, and today felt like the perfect time to share with you how I go about building a 1000 point army for Warhammer 40,000. And hopefully this video will help you to do the same, certainly if you haven't started playing the game already, or if you're quite new to it and want to get an idea of how you can go about putting together an army like this, ready to play at your friendly local game store or club. With so many different factions to choose from, different approaches to the game, there's going to be so many ways to do this, but I'm just sharing with you my way, how I've done it, and I've really enjoyed the process, and so hopefully you'll get something out of this and enjoy that process too. And for me, the big part of this game is playing with other people, so getting ready to take your army down to your local store is a big part of this video. In the video, I'm going to go through where to start. I'll go through army design and the very basics of how to put together your units, what units to buy, then we'll look at what do you need to actually play the game, certainly at your local club, and then how much does all this cost? What's it going to cost you to get going? Before we get started, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Firestorm Games for sponsoring the channel, and it'd be great if you check them out for all your hobby products. You're going to save up to 20% on all the hobby items at their store. I'll put a link in the description down below that will take you to their website. There's also a code there that they've given me to share with you, so you can save an additional 5% on top of those prices. So some great savings to be had, and it would be awesome if you went and checked out their website. Right, let's get going. So you're ready to start playing Warhammer 40,000, and the first thing you're going to need are some rules. You might have these already. If you haven't, you are going to need the core rules, and you're going to learn how to play those. Now, I've got loads of videos on my channel that you can check out that takes you through that whole process, and one full video, just under an hour, that goes through all the core rules, and you can use this PDF here as your guide, and that's a free PDF that you can get hold of. You can also buy the main book for 9th edition, but you don't need it. You can get a lot of the information online, so this isn't something you have to have. I don't own a copy, and I play the game every week, and so you don't have to get this book. But, you know, if you want it, there's nice artwork in there, there's lots of lore and background, some great reading to be had, but you don't have to, and I'm sure you can find it online. Next up, you're going to need a codex for your army. Now, I'm using the Imperial Fists as my example, so I need the Space Marines Codex. This Space Marine Codex is going to cover lots of the chapters for the Space Marines, so for many of them, you are only going to need this book, and this is the only book I have. Some chapters, like Space Wolves and the Imperial Fists, will have Codex supplements. Even the Ultramarines will have one too, and that's because they've got special units, special rules, so you're going to need that information as well. So that's something to bear in mind when you start buying your books. So at first it can seem quite a lot that you need to buy, and you know, you're probably thinking this is going to be really expensive, but it doesn't have to be. You certainly don't have to buy all of these books that you can see here. As I mentioned earlier, the Core Rules PDF is free, and that gives you everything you need to start playing, so there's no cost involved there. You don't have to get that main book, and you can certainly find resources online with the rules that it contains. Any rules that aren't in that free PDF but are in this main book can easily be taught to you by some other players at your friendly local game store, or again, just find the information online. Then you've got the Codex supplements. Now, for the Imperial Fists, I don't have it, but I found what I needed online, and you could choose a Space Marine chapter that didn't need a supplement, and then you would only need the Space Marine Codex. If you play other factions, such as Tau or Tyranids, then you're only going to need one codex as well, so no supplements required. For this example, we're just left with the Space Marine Codex, and I really like this book, and I can recommend getting it. If you're going to be playing often and you really want to learn how to play the Space Marines, then I can recommend investing and picking up this codex, because it's great. It's got the lore in there, information about all the chapters, all the rules you need to play them, and so I think personally, I recommend getting the book. Although you can get that information online as well, there's something about having that book. It makes the hobby really fun. So if you choose not to get the books, or you're new and you just want to test it out first, get those free rules and you can just play them from your iPhone or iPad. You can print off datasheets and special rules for your faction or chapter and easily get them online. You may have seen the data cards like the Space Marines ones here, and they're nice to have. I really like having them, it makes playing the game fun, but you really don't need them because those cards are actually in the Space Marines Codex, so again all the information is there or online. So now we've covered where to start, we can get hold of the main rules, we can get that free PDF to get going, and then we just need the codex for our faction or chapter. So now it's time to look at army design, and we want to start putting together 1,000 points. I think that's a good solid army to start with. You could start at 500 points and go up from there, but I find at my local club most people are playing 1,000, so 1,000's a sweet spot and it's really fun to play. When designing your army, it's good to think about putting together a battle-forged army. And so these are going to come in different sizes from up to 500 right up to 3,000 points. You're going to get different levels of command points and things like that from it. So there's lots of rules and things to read through, so get hold of those and familiarise yourself with them. But the thing we're going to focus on are the battlefield roles. Every battle-forged army is made up of a detachment, or sometimes more than one detachment. And so to keep it really simple, we're going to look at the patrol detachment. And I think that works really well for 1,000 points. So here we go. Here's the patrol detachment. This tells us the units we can include in the detachment. If any of the squares or icons are in red, that means they're compulsory. So we have to take 1 HQ, but we can take up to 2. We have to take 1 troop unit, but we can take up to 3. And then we've got the option to take the elites, the fast attack, the heavy support, and the flyers. Games Workshop have provided some army roster sheets that you can get from the Warhammer community site, download, print off for free, and then you can keep track of all the units and all the different special weapons and things that you give them, relics, all that kind of thing. So all those forms are available for free. Now I'll talk through the choices I made for my units for 1,000 points. And so we'll work from HQ right through to flyers, and I'll show you the units I picked out. Now I went with the rule of cool for a lot of this. I think that's awesome, especially when you're starting. Choose something you really like the look of, as well as having strategy and tactics in mind. And there's not many models cooler than Tor Garadon. This is awesome. So for my HQ unit, or for 1 HQ unit, I chose Tor Garadon. There's not much choice for the Imperial Fist where characters are concerned, so this was a no-brainer. Brilliant model, and it doesn't just look awesome, he's got some great stats as well. Then I was looking at troop units. I decided to go for 3 troop units. I can have a minimum of 1, must take 1 because of that red icon, but I can go up to 3 if I want to. I decided on 3 5-man squads. So the first one are the intercessors, then I've gone for another set of intercessors, and these are the Primaris intercessors, so they're going to have the different bolt rifles. And then I also went for a troop unit of assault intercessors, just because I had the models. That's something else to think about. Use what you might already have from maybe some box sets you've bought in the past. Next up is elites. I can take up to 2 or none, but I decided on 1, and it had to be a Redemptor Dreadnought. What a great model, so cool to play with on the battlefield. It's tough, it can dish out some serious punishment, and I think for 1,000 point Space Marine army, you cannot go wrong putting a Dreadnought of some kind in there. I thought I needed something that was more speedy around the battlefield, also that could drop in later rounds, and so I thought, why not go for some Inceptors? I had some actually, so I didn't have to buy them, so that was really helping me with my decision. I wouldn't mind trying out some Outriders, but I don't have those yet, going to get them in the Imperium collection, but what I did have were these 3 Inceptors, so I included those as my fast attack. Again, I could have none or up to 2, but I decided on just 1. Then it's heavy support. Now I've gone for 2 heavy support units. I can have up to 2 or none, so I've gone for 2, and this really plays into the narrative of the Imperial Fist, a shooting army. They're stalwart, they're going to be holding the line and then taking the enemy out at range. I want to get as many heavy weapons in there as I can, especially for that first round with the Devastator Doctrine, and so I can deal out some serious punishment against the enemy's vehicles. And this is probably my favourite unit for Warhammer 40,000, the Eliminators. These are awesome. 3 of them, 75 points. You can give them different weapons, from assassination bolt sniper rifles up to las fusils that can do really good damage to vehicles at range. So I've included one unit of 3 of these, and there's a very good chance I'm going to be putting another unit into my army once I get more from the Imperium magazine again, because I just think they're brilliant. For 75 points, it's a no-brainer for me, especially with the Imperial Fists. My final unit was the Gladiator Lancer. Now I bought this because I really liked the look of the Gladiator Reaper with the twin heavy onslaught Gatling cannon. I just thought that looked epic. It's a heavy 24 weapon, so you roll in 24 dice, which is so fun, but the points are just too high, and with all the other units combined, it took me over the 1,000 points. But the Gladiator Lancer, that's well situated, a lot lower in points, and that fit in well with my army, while still giving me something that hits at range and maybe presents a nice target for the enemy to waste some shots at while I move the rest of my units around and get them into position. So using that Battleforged army guide, I've put together my 1,000 point army list. So I've got Tor Garradon as the HQ, my Assault Intercessors as a 5-man squad, 2 5-man Primaris Intercessors, Redemptor Dreadnought, Inceptors Eliminators, and the Gladiator Lancer, taking me to around 1,000 points. I'm just under, so with some extra things that I've given them, relics, I've given some fists to the sergeants, that's going to take me up to almost bang on 1,000 points, which is where you want to be. You want to get as close as you can to it and make the most of those points. To work out those points, you're going to need your codex. Now, you can either go points or power. I prefer to do points. I just find it more fun in the planning stage. And so as you flick through the book, you're going to get near the back, and here you're going to see all the different data sheets for your different units that you can use in the game. Space Marines have got so many, which makes it really fun when you're building an army. So you go back through all these weapons. These are the weapon stats until you get to the points value page, and here this tells you how many points each unit is going to cost you, and it breaks it down to the different models. So if you put 10 Primaris Intercessors in one unit, it's going to cost you more than 5 because they're going to be priced individually. You're also going to get updates like this Munitorum Field Annual. This came free in the White Dwarf magazine, but if you don't buy that, you could also get it free as a PDF and an update. So look out for things like that, because you're going to have to keep up to date, especially if you're playing at a club regularly. So now we've gone with the army design, basically choosing the models you really like the look of, thinking about the tactics, how you want to play, and then going through your codex and adding up all the points. So now we've got to look at what to buy. We've got our units laid out, so we know we need to get those, or maybe use the ones we've already got, but we also want to decide on what books to buy. Do we want to get the cards? And then it's things like dice, measuring tape, and things like that. Here you can see everything I take to a normal game at my local game club, and so I've got my models, I've got my dice, a dice tray, I've got a measuring tape, I've got red dice for the wounds, yellow dice for the rest of the rolls, I've got the Ultra Pro card case with the Space Marine data cards that I use, and then the codex and the manual with the updated points value. So that's everything I need to take along, but I also grab the printed rules. These are the basic rules. That's that PDF I was going on about earlier, so I have that to hand just in case. And then I've got all my units that I found online, printed them off so they're all on a couple of pages. This saves me going through the book all the time and makes it a lot quicker. Tor Garradon is not in the Space Marine Codex, so you need to find that online. And then I'll write down all my different units, the different weapons they've got, so I can calculate the points and have little notes on there as well. And then it's just having things to hand. Again, we've got Tor Garradon there, but we've got the chapter tactics, perhaps some stratagems that are unique to him, things like that, warlord traits. Then I've got the Imperial Fist stratagems printed off, and then the chapter warlord traits highlighted, the ones that I could choose from. I've got chapter approved rules. Then there's the relics of the fists. So these are all the things that you would find in a codex supplement. But again, if you just play a chapter that's in the Space Marine Codex, you don't need to get this additional notes. And here I've got my Space Wolves notes, and I just lay out any little extras I get from them for each unit, just so I can keep track of it during the game as little reminders. I find that really helpful. So now we've gone through what to buy and what to take along to the game night. Another question is, what do you actually need? Do you need a box? I've upgraded to this one for my cards. I really don't need it because you don't even need the cards, as we talked about before. You can get that info from the book, but I've put the cards in these little sleeves as well, so you can upgrade everything you use and personalize it. I've got the cards here that I don't use because a lot of those don't apply to my Imperial Fists or the models and units I have. And then I put all my dice in the bottom, and I've just got 5 of these black ones. So when I get buffs from different units like Tor, Garradon, I put that dice there as a reminder. Then I've got a little bag with my wound dice, and I've got a big red dice for my command points as well. I find that helpful. But again, you don't need all this. I upgraded my tape measure recently to a yellow one, and I'm going to put the Imperial Fist logo on the front of that. Totally unnecessary, but super fun. You can also get cool things like these for Kill Team. I painted those to match my Imperial Fist as well. So I've got completely carried away with the whole theme here, and even done little barricades that they can take into Kill Team. Because that's great. You can use them in Kill Team as well. So here we've got a laser that helps with like measuring line of sight and things like that. So you can get completely carried away, but do you need all this? Not really. You only really need what we've covered earlier on. Now let's have a look at how much it all costs. And if you're starting from scratch, you're going to have to buy all these models brand new. And so it's going to be quite pricey, but I would say it's worth it. I've just took everything from Games Workshop here, and this is going to be the full price for the units I've got in the video. It's £259.50 before any discounts, and we'll look at discounts later on. If you choose to buy the Space Marine Codex and data cards, then they're going to cost you a little bit extra. That's going to cost you another £49.50, but as we talked about before, you don't have to get them. And then there's all the other items like the dice, the tray, the tapes, things like that, which comes to about £25.28 altogether. So everything you see here that I've been using will come to a grand total of £334.28 before any discounts. But do we need all this? We have to have the models, but we don't really need the Space Marine Codex if we can get the info online, and the data cards are going to be in the Codex. We don't need the dice tray, you can just roll it on the table. You certainly don't need the yellow box that I use. And we've still got that 20% to consider, the 20% discount off of the models. So if we take out the things that we don't really necessarily have to have and just go with the basics, then I've priced those now individually for the models, dice, measuring tape. That's going to take this down from that £334.28, taking that discount into consideration, and now it's going to be £217.80 to get started. If you play Space Marines or another faction, then I do recommend getting the Codex, because it makes the game so much more enjoyable. You've got all the lore and everything to learn about, and so I do recommend getting that. So that's going to add a bit more cost that I think is important, but only £26 when you consider you'll get up to 20% discount on that too. So you really are looking at £243.80 to get started with the list I've shown you here and the main Codex and the additional items. But then you're going to have to paint it, and you've got to glue it together before you get to that stage. So how much are the paints and the glue? I think you need to set back £50 for the paints and glue for one faction, certainly with the Space Marines. You don't need a huge amount of colours, but it's surprising, even on a yellow model that's mostly yellow like this one, how many other colours you need. So set back £50, that should cover it to get started. That's now taken us to close to £300 at £293.80. So, that's quite expensive. It's a lot of money to throw down up front for a new hobby, but there's other ways you can make some savings and cut back on that cost. One of those is to buy the box sets. You get much better value. Another one is secondhand. Look on eBay, car boot sales, your friends, and swap and trade. If your friends have got models they don't want anymore, you might have something cool you don't want. Why not do a swap and get started that way? But worst case, you're looking at about £300, unless, of course, you can't get that 20% discount, and then it would be a little bit more. But I'm approaching it, again, based on my experience, and so that's what I found. And while it is a lot of money, I don't think of it as just buying these products. I think of what am I going to get out of this army in the long term, and you do get a lot of value for your money when you break down it, and if you play often. Now if you don't play very often, obviously you're not going to get as much use from it as someone who plays every week at the game club, but you're still going to be able to get those models built, and that's a huge part of the hobby, building the models, changing them, kit bashing them a little bit, making them look cool and personalizing them to fit how you kind of see them playing and things like that. So that's a big part of the hobby. We want to get those models built, Painting, another huge part. You could spend hours getting this 1,000-point army ready, and so that's a huge part of the hobby too, and a great fun aspect of this game. Then you're going to be practicing, learning the rules, using your models to figure out how the game works and how to play it. So that's really fun too. You could spend hours before you even play your first game just going over the rules and playing around with it. So that's really cool. But this is a game that needs to be played with other people, so you're going to play and have fun. And if you play every week, you might be playing with this army for a year, 2 years, maybe less time if you want to build another army because you're getting right into it. But you're going to get a lot of time out of this. So all of a sudden, that £300 doesn't seem like such a huge amount of money, especially over a number of years with like potentially hundreds of games coming from it. And then finally, you're going to be planning your army. Once you've learned the rules and you get playing, you can start to grow it. You can add a unit or a model at a time now. You can slow down a little bit. I mean, you don't even have to do 1,000 points. You could start with 500 and slow grow it that way, which is not a bad idea at all. I just think 1,000 points is really fun. And from my experience at my local game store, we were all getting to play to 1,000 points quite quickly. And so if you're new to a game store that's been going for a while, there's a good chance a lot of people would have larger armies. I love the planning stage outside of playing the game, thinking about different units, different combinations. That's really cool. You can spend hours just thinking about your army, how to play it, and just trying out different styles. And then when you start adding more units to it and changing it that way, just more layers of fun. So yeah, I think the money's well worth it. When you can compare it to other hobbies, you know, there's always an investment up front to get into it, but you don't have to keep buying stuff. That's important. You don't have to keep buying new books, new rules every like month or whatever. Updates come out, but you can often find information online for free. Of course, when they change it to a new edition, that's going to affect you. But yeah, it's not that often you'd have to buy a new codex, and by then you'll probably want to build another army anyway. So that's how I went about building a 1,000-point army, thinking about the units and preparing to take an army to my friendly local game store to play every week. And I hope this has been helpful to you, giving you an insight into the process I use. But like I said earlier in the video, there's going to be so many ways to approach this. It's your hobby, do it your way, but the main thing is just to enjoy yourself and have fun. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this one, and don't forget to hit that notification bell too to join me here next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make these daily videos possible, and if you're interested in joining the community, it'd be awesome to see you there, and I'll put a link for that in the description down below.